Show has time. Looks for Deutsch. Deutsch at the one into the end zone.
Comes on to serve. Dug out by Bishop. This to the middle and slamming one home.
And free ball to the crossover. Eilertson will get the pass for Holly. Set up left side. Rusted down with the kill. He'll play action now. Look to pass over the middle. It's intercepted by Cole Hebel. Intercepted by Hebel, and he brings it back. Set it up, Bostena left side. Big kill blocked at the net. Kept alive by the Greyhounds.
Fetting's got room, and here's Bo Fetting. Fetting's still on his feet. Fetting's gone. Bo.
The Your Live Event Coaches Show is presented by the Hillsborough Economic Development Committee.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Your Live Event Coaches Show, brought to you by the Hillsborough Economic Development Commission. I'm Joe Lansella. Hope you all had a very wonderful Christmas. New Year is yet to come, and today we'll be continuing to review 2022. We'll talk with Tom Mix from the North Dakota High School Athletic Association. We'll also hear from Mark Riggs. He is an official, and he also assigns officials for the High Plains Official Association in North Dakota. And we'll talk some boys high school basketball too. We'll get a preview of the Barnes County basketball tournament that's coming up, and we'll hear from Perham coach Dave Cresap. We'll start things out, though, with a review of 2022, since there's not much time left in 2022. I had a chance to talk the other day with Tom Mix from the North Dakota High School Activities Association. It's time to review the year 2022, and here on the Your Live Event Coaches Show, brought to you by the Hillsborough Economic Development Commission, we're going to review what happened in North Dakota in 2022. Tom Mix from the North Dakota High School Athletic Association is here with us. Tom, it sounds like 2022 was a busy year and an exciting year.
Yeah, it was really an awesome year for us in the office. And I think if you look across the state, a lot of teams and a lot of student athletes had a lot of great moments and milestones. And like anything, there was a lot that really started off with the winter sports from last year that had their culminating events then in February and March for the winter sports last year. So to kind of kick it off right away, one of the bigger things that we did as a association was the board of directors previously had approved adding a sanctioned sport for girls wrestling. And last February was the first year that girls wrestling was at the state tournament then at the Fargo Dome. 14 girls won individual state championships. And if you ask anyone from around the state, that event was a rousing success. And I think even more so, you're seeing it now where the board recently approved adding a girls team duel for the upcoming state tournament. So in 2023, there'll be that for the girls wrestling division, which is awesome. And anytime you can add a sport and is great. And I think our student athletes are really benefiting and flourishing in that activity. And then it kind of fed right into some other highlights for us in the winter. Certainly were the basketball tournaments. Kindred won the Class B girls basketball tournament. They returned with that core group of seniors that won a state championship, and they were led by Miss Basketball, Abby Dukeshire, who's gone on to play softball at the University of Alabama, which is awesome. But she certainly ended her prep basketball career on a high note there, helping the Kindred girls win a state championship. Then we went right into the Super A, and the Minot Magicians swept the Super A. And certainly the girls basketball championship game last year between Minot and Century, I'd have to say, in my opinion, that was one of the better girls basketball games I've witnessed in the state. And I've been here about 12 years now. And that was just an awesome event. And the Minot girls were able to stop a 50-game winning streak by the Century girls. Just all around great play and great athletes in that game. And then, of course, later that night, the Minot boys won a state championship as well. So Minot became title town there in the winter, which was a good thing for them up there. And then, 4 wins. Minnewacan went undefeated in boys basketball in the Class B division. And I think if you remember, they played a kindred squad that was just full of great athletes too. And 4 wins, had to earn the undefeated season going through kindred there in the championship. And they became the first team to go undefeated since North Star in 2011, I believe, which is a great testament to Rick Smith's squad. He's a great coach, and that was a fun milestone or moment, if you will, for that program. And then, we had a little break there. I think the weather kind of didn't cooperate right away for the spring sports, but that's kind of it's always seems to be somewhat the case for us in North Dakota. But once it got going, I think the spring sports really found the groove. And it all sort of started with state track. The state track meet became a 3-day meet this past year. So in 2022, that was the first year that we went with the 3-day format. And I think overall, the student athletes, coaches, ADs, administrators, for the most part, thought that was a great format for it. I know personally, I was able to get to more field events than I had in the past years. And there is some really good field event student athletes that are really fun to watch. And, it certainly was spread out more. So you're able to get to more things, which I think in the grand scheme of things is great for viewers and audience members, fans, whatever, if you will. But I think that was a really great change that the board came up with prior to last year. But last spring was the first year we got to see how it worked. And I think it was great. And you certainly saw it with, there was a bunch of athletes that put up some records. There was a couple girls that won 4 individual state championships, CC DeBoom at Fargo Davies, who just recently committed to the University of Nebraska for girls or for women's track and field coming up. And then New Rockford Cheyenne's Kelsey Belquist won 4. So that was kind of neat. And I think both of them had common events. So it was really neat to see the A division, the B division, just great athletes all around in there at the Bismarck Bowl. And yeah, I mean, the spring sports, always a great, we kind of jam them in there a little bit, like I said, with the abbreviated schedule. But once they were able to get going, it was awesome. And that first week in June, or that culminating weekend, is always fun. And to see how they all shake out. And I think that was really fun. And then, we had a little summer break, which is always nice. And then it fed right into the fall for us. I got going with football and all the other fall sports as well. But some of the fall highlights, I thought, were the boys soccer tournament was really fun to watch. Those girls golf tournaments were great. I think it was the B was held at Minot Souris Valley, and we had really good weather, which isn't always the case in North Dakota as we get later into the fall. So it was awesome for the girls golf season to have and experience some really good weather. And we were able to, I think overall, the football season was a big hit with fans. I think the playoffs were about as competitive as they've been in years past, and look no further than no number 1 overall seeds made the Dakota Bowl. So that was something where you got to say, well, you always think, well, the number 1 seeds are your favorites, but this year they were given some, tough opponents, and there was a lot of really good football programs out there. And then the Dakota Bowl, as always, was an awesome event for us in the association. That's our certainly one of our top events in the fall. And I think overall, all 4 games were really fun to watch. There was really good performances in all of them, I thought. The first one, Central Cass and Velva Drake Animus Garrison in the 11B division, that came down to a final drive, a goal line stand for Velva to win their 10th state championship under head coach Larry Sandy, which that was a great storyline to watch play out. You know, they had been to Dakota Bowls in the past, and that was their 10th one under Coach Sandy, and they're 10 for 10. And the next game went into overtime, our 9B division game, Cavalier and New Salem. Awesome game. Anytime it can go into overtime, that's thrilling to watch. And New Salem was able to, you know, get the W. And a lot of those guys on their team, they're multi-sport athletes. So you'll probably see them at the wrestling tournament later this year in Fargo. So good kudos for them. The Holsteins cattle truck pulled up to the Fargo Dome, and they finally were able to take home a state championship in the Dakota Bowl era. And then Peyton Holkalter kind of powered the Jamestown Blue Jays to a back-to-back state championship in 11A. He set a Dakota Bowl record, I believe, for touchdowns, combined touchdowns accounted for by a single player was 7. He caught a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, and passed for touchdowns, obviously being the quarterback. And then he also had a pair of interceptions. So he sort of did it all for the Blue Jays. And then in the 11-2A division, you know, Fargo Shanley, that was probably one of the more complete performances by a quarterback that I've seen since I've been, you know, watching prep football in North Dakota. Michael Rosberg, who's going to the University of St. Thomas. Right. He had a great game and helped the Shanley Deacons win a 11-2A division state championship. So that's their first one since they've opted up into the highest division of football. And Troy Mattern has a lot to be proud of there, being the head coach there for the Deacons. And then the last bit for the fall was the state volleyball tournament. Both divisions, I think, were another year of highly competitive volleyball. Ultimately, it came down to, in the B division, Northern Cass and Linton HMB. Linton was trying to go for the three-peat, but the Northern Cass Jaguars stopped the three-peat, if you will, and they had a really good
5 sets too, didn't it?
Yeah, it went 5, and that was a really good match for the Jaguars, and they won a state championship for the first time since I think 2013, if I remember correctly. So another big program boost for them. And in this Class A division, West Fargo Cheyenne defeated Bismarck Century. That was a 5-setter too, and that was I'm pretty sure that one. No, maybe I can't remember if that one. It was so much stuff going on, and that was a late night. So I think Cheyenne was able to get the W there. And Century is a great program. So anytime that you can hang with Century in a state championship environment, I think that says a lot to any volleyball program that's going toe to toe with the Patriots. And I kind of rambled on there a little bit for our good stuff from the year 2022, but we got a lot in, and there's good things to come, but it's always fun to look back too.
Hillsborough Economic Development Committee provides information and a support for small businesses. Experience Hillsborough. More at 104.
Now 2023 just around the corner, and it seems like one of the big things that is going to be discussed certainly early in the year is the idea of going from 2-class basketball to 3 classes. Where are we with that right now?
Yeah, so I think the best way to spell it out is at the December 1st board meeting, the board of directors made a motion to accept the 3-class proposal that had met the 60% threshold of support from our membership schools. And if you look at our bylaws as an association made up of those member schools, the policy to add a third or any division or any additional division of in a sport or an activity is to meet those threshold of 60% of approval. And then there's certain things that happen after that that have to be looked at. And I think there was a couple studies that have to take place. And obviously the 3-class proposal, there was some things that probably weren't addressed and they weren't expected to be addressed. But now that the board has accepted the proposal, there's some things that have to be worked out before the board can finally ultimately approve that said plan and then put it for implementation for whatever season they deem available or feasible. So I think moving forward, the board has set a deadline, if you will, for February 22nd, I believe is the date where something would need to be approved on that by that date in order to be implemented for the upcoming season, which would be the 23-24 season. Anything that would happen after that would probably be implementation in a future season. But I think right now the committee work that needs to go into it as part of that policy after accepting the plan is to the board's ability there to meet as committees to work out some things that need to be addressed. And we'll see where it goes from here. But there could be some big things and big changes on the horizon. But for now, that's what we know. And it'll be fun to see how the board is able to work at getting to that goal potentially for implementing a 3-class basketball proposal system for a future date to be determined at this point, but it could be as soon as next year, according to them, if they get that by February 22nd. So, yeah.
Will there be a lot of discussion on who makes it, who will be in Class B and who would be in Class C?
Well, I think right now the division alignments are, there wouldn't be Class C. I think the Class B existing schools would be Class B still, and then there would be an A would be the middle, and then 2A would be a traditional Class A higher division, if you will. So that there would be some cosmetically different, it would look a little different if you look at what each division is named, but that's beside the point. But I think right now the proposal is, there's certainly some things that have to be worked out, but yeah, that is part of it, is determining the final division placements for the membership schools. So they'll have to work that out in between now and their committee work coming up. And it's sort of in the board's hands, like I said, based on that motion that they made on December 1st to accept it. So then I believe they'll use existing committees moving forward. And yeah, like I said, we'll probably all be a little smarter middle of February on what that potentially will look like. So yeah.
I just had a thought cross my mind. Would you need more officials if you go to 3 classes? But part of me also thought, wait a minute, you've got the same number of schools. How would that change anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some things, like I said earlier, that have to be discussed that weren't probably expected to be discussed at that 3-class focus groups proposal. But now that they've reached that threshold and that support is there, yeah, they're going to have to talk about potential. I don't know if there'll be more needed, if you will, but the officials piece, at the state tournaments. I think there's 12 officials at those tournaments that we have now. I don't know if they'll probably have to consult with the NDOA, that's the North Dakota Officials Association, on if there'll be changes to the format of the number of officials needed by rule. I mean, yeah, when there's going to be the same amount of schools, so you would think, we're always looking for more officials, but yeah, I mean, I guess you never know until they kind of make that final call on what those officials' assignments will look like for those tournaments that will now be changed from previous formats, and we'll have to see where it goes.
I'm guessing dates and locations would have to be factored in too.
Oh yeah, yep, and venues, that's all going to be probably ironed out in those committees forthcoming, making sure that there's if there are going to be implementation, if they're going to be implemented for next year, what are the dates? Yes, all those are important, and you got to make sure that you have everything planned out as best you can. And I think the prevailing thought was we got from the membership is if we're going to do this, it has to be done right. I have every confidence that it can be. It's just that if you don't do your due diligence, like in anything, I mean, in anything, you could be setting yourself up for less than optimal conditions later. You don't want to have these big events later and find out that you didn't address some of that stuff that, and I think we'll be able to do so. It's just that you don't want it to be a negative experience for the student athletes, the coaches, the fans. If it is, you'll definitely hear about it. And I think you gotta do your best at making sure that you have everything planned out, like I said, the best you can. And I have every confidence that it can get done, and we'll see where it goes. But like I said, we'll all be smarter middle of February on what comes out of now in between to that point.
Okay, we'll have to look forward to that.
Yeah.
So some big things coming in 2023 and 2022. A great year in North Dakota high school sports. Tom Mix from the NDHSAA, thanks very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, and we will continue with the Coaches Show right after this.
Take a good look at Hillsboro. It's conveniently located between Fargo and Grand Forks. Hillsboro is a growing community with solid local schools with high graduation rates. There's an industrial park ready to host a new business. And there's Woodland Park with activities all year round. The Hillsboro Economic Development Corporation asks you to take a good look at Hillsboro when you're thinking about a place to put down roots and grow. For more information, contact the Hillsboro Economic Development Corporation at growhillsboroND.com.
Lee Brothers Sales, Highway 9 in Ada, invites you to order your new Buick and Chevrolet vehicles. From the Silverado, Trailblazers, Traverse, and Enclave, Lee Brothers is your authorized Chevrolet and Buick dealer, providing sales and a service to the area since 1975. For ordering your vehicles, talk with Mitch, Smurf, or Jay. Trust the experts who know your vehicles best and take advantage of great Chevy certified service offers today. Lee Brothers Sales, Highway 9, Ada, 218-784-2000.
This is Chris from RDK Enterprises, your local precision planting dealer. Manage what you can to overcome what you cannot. Farming is all about preparing your operation to be successful when given an opportunity. Invest a few minutes and bring in your seed meters to be reconditioned and calibrated. We have some room, so give us a call and we can help you overcome those simple obstacles. RDK Enterprises, 636-2119, 636-2119, or planterdoc.com.
Welcome back to the Your Live Event Coaches Show, brought to you by the Hillsboro Economic Development Commission. We'll talk some boys high school basketball now. I had a chance to talk with Dave Cresap, the coach at Perham. We'll hear from him in just a few minutes, but first Chase Miller has an interview with us to preview the Barnes County Boys Basketball Tournament that's coming up.
It's now time to gear up for the Barnes County Boys Basketball Tournament here right after the new year on January 3rd. We get going for the quarterfinals, the 5th and the 6th, all happening inside the W.E. Osmond Fieldhouse in Valley City. And join us now is the commissioner of the Barnes County Basketball Tournament. That is Calvin Kraft from Enderlin. Calvin, before we talk about the boys, the girls a couple weeks ago wrapped up in a classic with 6 teams. Maple River came out on top for the Raiders to win a championship. What does it just kind of mean for you particularly to be part of the BCT, and kind of how long have you been part of it, both from a girls and boys basketball perspective here, Calvin?
Yeah, you go way back in time. There used to be 16 and more than 16 teams just in Barnes County that would get together. And it was kind of, the biggest deal that there was. And so obviously now we only have about one actual school in Barnes County with some different co-op type towns there. But obviously, I think I've been the commissioner now 4 or 5 years. I've been playing in it as a coach, obviously, since 2012. So that's, obviously, it's an awesome thing to have. The boys have been 105 years, the girls 77 or something like that. And so obviously, as the commissioner, hopefully, if it's not going to happen anymore, it's not under my watch. So hopefully we can keep this thing going. Obviously, there's some financial things that have to happen, and obviously the overall teams with co-ops coming together have really changed the landscape of it, really trying to find teams from wherever. But again, obviously Maple River now in their first year as a co-op winning it was kind of fun to see. They've won a ton of girls tournaments. And so obviously that's fun to see the history and look in that booklet that Mark Potts puts together of past champions and different things like that. You see all the history and the towns that go with it. And it's kind of it's a fun historical tournament, that's for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the boys side. I went back. 1917 was the very first installment on the boys side. And there's towns like Grand Prairie, Daisy, Baldwin, Sanborn, Oriska, Nome, Rogers, and others that maybe people don't know where that town is. Maybe in some particular cases, Calvin, the town's not what it was 30, 50, 60 years ago. And now it's in a co-op very similar to, as you said, maybe with some surrounding towns just in Enderlin, as you know as well. So when you do look at that booklet, there is a lot of history in this tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody probably has a little bit of a memory from it. Even I was in high school at Central Cass in the early 2000s, and I remember going to the tournament, having some friends playing it from Hope Page, etc. So like just having that around, and somebody from whether it's Daisy or Sanborn or whatever who knows something that happened at the Barnes County tournament, whether it was in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, or whatever, it's kind of a fun thing to have there. And obviously, the last 2 years, boys side kind of had a classic. Obviously, the 3 years ago during COVID, everybody just kind of hosted games. It was still kind of part of the Barnes County Classic. We scheduled the games. We just had to have them at our own locations. And then last year, obviously, still being in Valley and bringing people there. Obviously, on the boys side, just a classic. But the girls did get to get a 6-team kind of tournament, which makes it good to have a champion and do all that kind of stuff. So just obviously, there's a lot of things that go into a tournament like that. We used to have like a track and field day, a Barnes County Association track and field day with different teams, a band thing that kind of went on. So obviously some of those things have dwindled out with the school number, and obviously the co-ops, all the teams are kind of in 1 or 2 teams now, like it used to be more spread out. But yeah, we're still trying to keep it going, and I think it's good for all teams involved.
I think I like the location too, the Bubble or W.E. Osmond Fieldhouse. Calvin, I've told people whether it's for VCSU Viking games or hosting the BCT or something in between, that can be a really cool environment, especially when you get, even if it's a fourth full, you get people who are energized, Calvin. It gets pretty loud in there pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I'm biased because I'm a Viking from the mid 2000s. But yeah, I love the Bubble. I love everything about Valley City and the just the vibe when you go in there, whether it's full or not full. I just like the atmosphere, and it's a good place to watch a game, even if you're not involved. So yeah, the Bubble has been awesome. Valley City State does a great job managing the tournament for us, and so obviously we hope that continues. But they're great.
And Calvin, we'll continue here talking about some of the teams this year on the boys' side. The same 6 from the girls in terms of Maple River, Enderlin, Wymer, Lidgerwood. You have Barnes County North, Lemoore, Litchfield, Marion, and Richland. And then this season, Standing Rock, and you also have Mayport CG. I remember last year, Dunseith had to make the drive. Standing Rock's got a little bit of a drive. So you mentioned about the teams. How do you find to make sure you can try to get to 8 teams here? And what is that like, making phone calls and conversations to have different areas area teams come in, because I know it's kind of nice when you get a different flavor from a different region, that maybe it's not, the Warbirds going up against the Colts, if they've already played each other or they got a game, coming up later on this season as an example.
Yeah, the main thing with these tournaments is try to play somebody you don't play inside the region. And obviously with the co-ops and different things happening, we have quite a few Region 1 teams in it. So you might play somebody twice. And if you play them twice during the regular season, you might play them 3 times. And if you play them in the region qualifier or something, that could be 4. Obviously back in the district days, that was pretty normal anyway, playing 2, 3, 4 times. But obviously trying to get anybody who wants to come, sending a message out on the Activity Association, hey, who wants 3 games? And that's kind of the tough part, is somebody wants a game. There's lots of teams that want 2 games, but having 3 games open on their schedule during the week, as we know, the surrounding area of Barnes County, obviously we kind of spread thin there. Now we got to go farther distance wise, and on a Tuesday, sometimes that's difficult. So just trying to find, anybody who needs 3 games and anybody willing to make the trip and play. And obviously the boys last year, we had Dunseith come down for 2. And then obviously the last day got canceled due to weather. So we actually went up there and played Endel and Wise. Obviously having Hillsborough come play us at the bubble last year. So we found some really good matchups boys wise, again, because they only wanted 1 game or 2 games. So we couldn't quite get that actual tournament, but we did find 2 teams that wanted 3 games this year. And Mayport will be a really good addition. They're a solid basketball team, and Standing Rock will be really good also. I think they were receiving votes in the first poll. So, I mean, obviously a nice mixture of teams, keep it kind of, hopefully we play 1 or 2 of them, so we don't have to play Richland, Wyndmere, somebody against. Obviously you want to win the tournament, but also it's nice to play somebody that it's not on your schedule, talking Region 1 wise, or Region 3 wise with Barnes County North, etc. But yeah, no, anything and everything. If you want to play, let me know, because we will we'll get you in. Girls wise too, I just put another message out. We need 2 more teams. It'd be nice to have 8. We made it work with 6, but obviously I'll kind of keep looking and have conversations throughout the whole year, looking to fill it.
And you mentioned about the 8 this season, which means it's a true 8-team bracket, whether it was your travel basketball days when you're in 5th grade or somewhere in between. It's quarters, semis, place games then on that 5th, or you get to the consolation bracket. So how fun is it just to, from a coach's point of view, Calvin, as the head coach for the Interland Eagles, from a coach's point of view now, what does this tournament kind of allow you to do, whether it is for some regions, it's still districts into regions, for others, it's a regional tournament, but essentially it gives some guys a taste of maybe what they haven't been through before, which is 3 games in a 4-day process, which is very reminiscent to pretty much all the regionals across the state of North Dakota, with how it's normally on a Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday once you get to late February or early March, if it's boys or girls basketball.
Yeah, correct. And add in the 94-foot floor, just the vibe, and you get there to the locker room. It's more of a tournament atmosphere, just because the court's big, just because you're playing 3 games in 4 days, just all that kind of, gets your mind and body ready for a tournament type. And obviously we're going to rank the boys here. I'm going to send out an email today, get them in by Monday. Like, hey, after every coach gets their rankings in, we'll put in a 1 through 8 and send the bracket out. Same thing we did with the girls. That's a coach's vote to get ourselves the first round matchups. And then we kind of go from there. And obviously girls wise, it's kind of different with 6 teams trying to make it work with tiebreakers and things, but this will be very easy. Obviously a straight state tournament bracket, as you will. Obviously the regions and districts, sometimes it's different with cross bracketing, and regions, if you lose, you're done. But, the only other tournament like this would be the state tournament, where you play 7th and 8th, 5th and 6th, 3rd and 4th. So you're going to get 3 games no matter what. And usually by the last day, you're playing somebody kind of even. Obviously if you're playing for 7th or 8th or 1st or 2nd, you're usually pretty good games when you have 8 teams and you have to win to get where you are, or you lost to get where you are. And that makes it good also, because you're going to play somebody equal kind of to you towards the end for sure.
Final thing for you, Calvin, before you let you go, I was taking a look at that booklet that you mentioned from Mark Potts, and just trying to take a look at some names here. Ethan Brown, most consecutive free throws in a tournament with 24 from Finley, Sharon Hope Page. You got Wimbledon and Pillsbury back in 1974, most consecutive free throws in a game from Jay Law. I just go through, and there's so much history with this tournament that kind of goes back to, whether it's as we mentioned, with the records going back to the 1910s for the decade for the first one, but there's been a lot of really good names, whether it's been coaches or players that have played in this tournament from a long time here, Calvin.
Yeah, I don't know if Mike Stoneman's still in that booklet or not, but he was a really good friend and teammate of mine in college, and he used to light it up for Maple Valley back in the day. So yeah, a lot of those names you kind of recognize, and it's kind of fun to see. And then obviously on the girls' side, Riley and everybody like that. So yeah, I mean, if you're around the area in a school and you know somebody who's played in it, it's kind of fun to see those names. And obviously some of the teams coming in now don't really know that history, especially on the boys' side. And it's kind of you kind of try to, hey, this is the 105th version of this tournament, whether you think it's cool or not cool. It's been a long time, and so obviously it's kind of got some historic relevance to it. But yeah, all those names, and they all have good memories of it too. Talking to those guys that have actually played in it, and so it's a fun tournament, and obviously, hopefully, we can play well ourselves when we get there, and everybody has a good time.
Yeah, over 100 years here, and we'll have all the games for you on your live event as well. But first and foremost, make sure you go to the game if you can. The BCT at the Bubble, always a lot of fun. And Calvin, last thing here, just take us through the structure again. Does everything get underway roughly at 3 o'clock, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday? And heaven forbid we get a snow day like we did last year. What happens from your point of view then if, for example, a Friday gets banged? What happens from your point of view then? Last and final thing for you, Calvin, just to kind of put a bow here on the BCT.
Yeah, obviously, it all kind of depends on Valley City State's schedule. If we go Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or if we go Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or we Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So in my 10 years involved, we've had all three, I think, and it's different depending on Valley City State's girls or boys schedule, who they host in the Bubble. And this year, it's Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Obviously, the girls didn't have to start till 4:30. Now the boys will have to start at 3 every day. So somebody's going to get out of school around 1, or whoever it is, obviously, to get there and have a tip-off of 4 full games. Hopefully the weather holds, we get through. Obviously, say if we play Tuesday, weather's bad Thursday, we would just play the semifinal then on Friday probably, and wherever that ended up, high seed would host later in the season, right? You're not gonna be able to get back to the Bubble. They're gonna have too many scheduling issues, so it would be play the championship at wherever it is, the 1 seed or whoever's in the championship, the higher seed would host it. So obviously there's ways to make it work, and if we can't play Tuesday, moves to Thursday, we'll just go in order, and then obviously we just hope that everything works out well. And 3 o'clock, a little bit early for some teams, but sometimes the kids like getting out and getting to Valley City. And some of us, we're small town folk. Most of us in this tournament, you get to go to eat McDonald's afterwards, or Taco John's or something. That's different. And so it's obviously not just a game, but you get to go to a big city, if you will, of 6,000 in Valley City. But we like going there from a town of not many things like that.
Yeah, no, without question. Knock on wood, the weather's good. Always a lot of fun. The girls' tournament was great as well. Calvin, thanks for all you do behind the scenes, and we'll see you down in Valley City here coming up next week.
Yeah, thanks for covering us. Everybody loves watching on your live event. They glad it's on your live event because they like listening to you as it goes. So obviously, thanks for doing that, and thanks for covering us.
You bet. That again is Calvin Kraft here, Commissioner of the Barnes County Basketball Tournament. Will continue on the Your Live Event Coaches Show after this.
Live, work, and play here in Hillsboro, North Dakota. The Hillsboro Economic Development Committee can assist you with information and support for business and housing. Experience Hillsboro. More at 104.
Back on the Your Live Event Coaches Show, brought to you by the Hillsboro Economic Development Commission. Boys basketball now, talking with Dave Cresap, the coach of the Perham Yellow Jackets, the defending 8AA section champions. And Dave, I understand you're off to a great start now, 4-0 this year.
Yeah, we got off to a pretty good start. We had an opening game on December 2nd or so, and then we had a 2-week lull in there where we didn't have any games, but we were able to pick up a great scrimmage against a really good Big Lake team in between there. So that really helped us get some action before we got back into playing games.
Okay. Now, if I understand correctly, you've got 3 starters back from last year's team?
Yes, we have 3 starters back that were on there. And then we also have a guy that came right off the bench, a couple of guys that came off the bench. So we had a little experience coming back, but we still need to find that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids that are going to solidify those spots.
Who are the fellows that you have coming back?
Well, we had Micah Thompson coming back as our point guard. We had Jacob Daniels, who started in the post. And then we had Soren Anderson, who was our leading scorer back from last year.
Okay. Is it the same kind of thing with any team, is that it takes a while to find its own identity?
Yeah, we established our own identity, I think, already on the defensive end of the floor. They've really been working hard that way. But with the new guys coming in, we gotta really get that identity on the offensive end and what it's gonna take to win, big games against really good competition.
And you've got plenty of really good competition on your schedule. I see. Cherry, that's a long trip.
Well, yep, they're coming to Perham, and that'll be a nice Friday night game where I think it'll be really, really heavily packed into our gym. A lot of local people are interested in that one, area town. So I think that's going to be a big one to add to our schedule. And right now I know how good they are. They're really a solid team.
And you've got some other tournaments, I think, going to be out of town. I think I believe I saw St. Michael Albertville is one place you're going to play.
Yeah, we play in the breakdown. We play in 3 of them. In fact, one of them's in Perham. We play Fergus Falls. One we play Watertown Mayor, and then one highly ranked Albany. We play them in another one. So those are 3 big breakdown tournaments that we play in, and we loaded up with some great competition.
And Thief River Falls, I think, on the schedule toward the end of the year. So you're basically willing to play just about anybody and everybody other than, say, the Timberwolves.
Yeah, I think we got most of them. We got Bemidji up that way too. We got Thief River. We got Detroit Lakes on our schedule. We got Esco on our schedule. And then, of course, in our own conference, our conference is loaded with talent and great coaches. So it's going to be a challenging year, but I think it will get us ready for the playoffs.
Who do you see in the Heart of Lakes besides yourself as being contenders?
Oh, well, I could name DGF off the top of my head, Pelican Rapids off the top of my head, Holly, and of course, Barnesville's going to be around in there too. So when you look at our conference is probably, I would have to really, not biased or anything, but from top to bottom on most years is one of the toughest in the state.
Okay. And looking a little bit in a broader scope, who do you see in 8AA as teams that could try to take away the title that you won last year?
Well, it's the same teams out of our conference mostly, but then you got to add in Thief River Falls. I think Thief River Falls is going to be one of those teams that's going to be a very difficult out in the tournament with a great returning group coming back. Of course, then Pelican, DGF, Holly, Barnesville are always, and then Fergus is in our section also. So it's a loaded section. There's 8, 9, 10 teams that are really solid, and even the teams below that, if you play them on a given night, they can beat you.
Dave Cresap is the coach of the Perham Yellow Jacket boys. We are recording this prior to your holiday tournament that's going on this week. When you get back started in January, you've got quite a homestand, I understand.
Yeah, we got a little homestand there, but our big homestand comes in February. But we start out with DL at home right after Christmas, which is going to be a real formidable opponent as they just knocked off Bemidji for the first time, I think, since 2018. Up Bemidji by 13. They're very, very athletic. They're well coached by Brett Moss, and they got talented kids on that floor, really athletic. So that'll be a good opener after we get back after Christmas break and see what our holiday tournament brings, and then we go from there.
Okay, we'll see what the Yellow Jackets are able to do in the coming season. Hopefully some more big things coming out of there besides snack foods.
Yeah, well, we got snack food and dog food. We got a lot of that, but I think we got a nice squad coming. Of course, everybody's good and well coached around here. That's what I want to say to everybody out there, is how well coached teams are in this section of conference. And it's just a great thing of basketball to come out and watch in this area.
Okay. Dave Cresap, thanks very much, and best of luck to the Perham Yellow Jackets this year.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, and stay in touch.
All right. And we'll continue with the Coaches Show right after this.
We built Irie Insurance with one philosophy: hire great people and provide great service and options. We want to help protect your home, farm, crops, personal, and your businesses. Hello, this is Shane with Irie Insurance, and since day one, we have followed this golden rule to help protect you. That's why we have so many locations like West Fargo, Devils Lake, Hope, Hillsboro, Mackville, and Towner. To find out more about Irie Insurance, go to IrieInsurance.com. Irie Insurance is an equal opportunity employer and provider.
In Hope, North Dakota, we aren't just a town, we're a community, one that you can be proud of, where you and your family can grow. With available jobs, affordable housing, a local golf course and pool, the Sportsman Club, and great educational opportunities, there hasn't been a better time to join the Hope community, ideally located between Fargo, Grand Forks, and Jamestown. For more information, go to www.hopend.com. Live, work, and play in Hope, North Dakota.
Buying a new home, but worried about the interest rate and terms from your bank? At First Class Mortgage, we'll find a mortgage that fits your needs. Shopping national banks and other lenders for the lowest rate and most affordable terms. Saving you time and money. So all you need to worry about is enjoying your new home. First Class Mortgage. Our expertise, your peace of mind. Put an expert to work for you. Call today.
When it comes to high school sports, there's someone or a group of people that we usually don't think much about, and that's the officials. It's getting tougher and tougher to find officials these days for high school sports. Chase Miller had a chance to talk recently with Mark Riggs, who is himself an official, and he also assigns officials for the High Plains Official Association.
Join us now on our Your Live Event Coaches Show. Not a coach, not a player, not an administrator right now, but an official and also an assigner for the local High Plains Officials Association as well within the Fargo Metro for Class A and B basketball is Mark Riggs. And Mark, first and foremost, I'm glad we got an opportunity to speak. And I always like to get a different perspective sometimes in sports, and official is definitely a different perspective from a coach or a player. So my first thing is, for crying out loud, what got you into officiating, Mark?
Yeah, Chase, thanks for having me. So back in, I'm going to say 1994, real quickly, I was in Devils Lake, North Dakota, on the bowling alley there. And Terry Brenner, a longtime official in that area who was very successful on the women's side of the North Central Conference, came in and asked me if I'd ever thought about refereeing basketball. I'm like, no, had no interest at that time. And he said, well, if you think about it, there's one more clinic that was going to be held in Carrington. Because back then the boys' season was different from the girls' season. So the girls' season already passed, and the boys' season, they were really, even back then, they were shorthanded officials. So for some reason, I told Terry, no, I had no interest. But for some reason, I got into my car that Wednesday, and I believe it was a Wednesday, and drove to Carrington by myself and attended that last meeting that you had to be into to register. And from there on, my first game, and then I told Terry I did it, and Terry Brenner took me under his wing, and I worked that whole first season with Terry Brenner. And he's the one that got me rolling in it with Terry Wallace and those guys. But Terry Brenner was my partner, and he took me under his wing, and there's all history of it, as they say, from there. So just out of weirdness, I just got my car and drove. So.
And Mark, let's take us through that. At that point, was that becoming an elementary, a middle school, a high school? What was that progression like for your first, so to speak, a toe in the water in terms of back in the 90s? And how similar is that to today's world? If, someone wants to become an official, later this season or next year, is it really they kind of put you in to start and hopefully get a seasoned person to learn under like you kind of did in your time?
Yeah, so I got lucky. When you say lucky, I got thrown right to the fire. My very first game ever was a varsity Class B game up in Starkweather versus Four Winds, Minnewacan. And I got thrown right into the fire. And nowadays it's a little bit different. So, if officials want to get started, we start them at the lower levels. Obviously, we get them registered, and we start them out with some varsity, sub-varsity stuff and do some training with them and stuff. But there's such a shortage right now that even back when I started in 94, there was a shortage. So it hasn't gotten any better. I think it's gotten worse. So, yeah.
And that was going to be my next question. We'll get to the shortage in a moment. But Mark, let's just take us through your career specifically here. Sure. Going back from the mid-90s, did you ever think about being a college official, or how did it all of a sudden become into your mind, hey, I think this is something I enjoy. This is something I like. I'm sure there's, like any job, there's the pros and the negatives, whether it's travel or nights away from home or stuff of that nature. But at the end of the day, when did you think that, hey, I think I can become a college official, and I think this is something that I really want to be part of my, lifestyle going forward, Mark?
Yeah, that's important because when I first started refereeing, didn't know what to expect. But once I got into it, then I was in, and I fell in deep, and I loved it. And when I say I loved it, I mean, me being an ex-police officer in LA for many years, the confrontational part of it was already there. So the people yelling at me personally didn't bother me. So I got over that real quickly, being a new guy. But I fell in for it. I loved it. And then I started going. I thought about, going to the camps and stuff, and people laughed at us. Bringing Rob Kuhneman, for being from Devil's Lake, you're not going to get hired. All that stuff. So we decided, you know what? We're going to do it on our own. So we went to camps. Started going to camps in Sioux Falls and Sioux City. Colin Capitan was the assigner for the North Central Conference back in the day. But we started doing that stuff in 1995, I think, or 96. I got hired in the North Central Conference after just 2 years into Division II. The second year after my first year in high school, I did work some Lake Region Junior College stuff, which really, set the tone for me to go forward. But just felt I got the itch, and I got into it, and I loved it. And it was a long process, a long road, but just going to camps, just getting better every year, putting the work in the summertime. As an official, just as is coaching, it's a year-round job. You just can't take off the summers and stuff. You have to attend camps. Rules and points of emphasis change every year, so you got to keep updated on that kind of stuff.
I'm sure a lot of people are used to football camps or baseball camps or name your insert sport camp. But from an official's point of view, Mark, is it 1 week is basketball, 1 week is football? I mean, if you really want to be an official, how many sports can you officiate? Or is it once you get to a certain level, maybe you need to specialize, as they would say, at certain points, Mark, when this kind of comes to be, when it comes to camps and clinics, and just how much are you going to put yourself out there through, a 365-day season?
Right. I mean, I don't. In today's game, there's enough room for you to officiate different levels because everything's separated now into seasons. Back in the day, like I said, girls were first, and then boys, and then going forward. So now it's boys and girls same season. So that kind of ties you up. But I do baseball. I did baseball for a while. I do football. So there's different seasons, and you can register and stuff. So there is an overlap of a few weeks in the basketball and football, depending on if you get playoffs. But for the most part, officials can do basketball, they can do football, they can do baseball. Some people do volleyball. So just a matter of how much you want to put yourself out there in the schedule.
Are you graded? Do you need a license? I mean, when I go driving, Mark, my driver's license coming up here in a year and a half. So I got to go back in, and everyone knows the test that you got to do there. From your point of view, is this a yearly thing that you got to get renewed, or is it go to these camps, go to these clinics? How does that work at the end of the day?
So it's still a little different than high school and college. And high school, obviously, you have to register every year and take and do a rules clinic in town that we provide. And there's also an online clinic and then a test. But that's for high school and college. We're all year to year. We're all independent contractors. Every year, technically, we get released at the end of the year, and come April, and then you come back and do your camps and stuff in the summertime, and hopefully you get the call back to come referee starting in late October, early November. So, but every in the college game, especially in the Division I, which a lot of pressure there, but we're all year to year. We're all independent contractors, but if you can maintain your agility and your weight and all that stuff, and do all the things throughout the summer, like I said, you can't take the time off. You got to put the work in. But it's a year to year thing in college.
Take us.
I apologize. There is no license, but you do have to get. You have to go to get to the Division I level, which is hard. There's only like 800 nationwide. You have to go to a camp and get looked at, and supervisors and people are there evaluating you. Then hopefully you get picked up. But it's a hard process.
Take us just through kind of what your schedule is right now as a Division I basketball official, Mark. I mean, where are you going? Is it Midwest? Is it coast to coast? I mean, how does this kind of work for you specifically? And do you work with the same guys in a crew, or is it a little bit different, from a Wednesday to a Saturday, so to speak, throughout the week?
Yeah, so it's a little different than football, where in football you have the same set of officials or crew. In basketball, even in high school and college, there is no set. You don't have the same partner. Like Division I, I'm in two different consortiums, so I have three conferences in the Midwest, which is the MAC Horizon Summit, and in the West Coast for Bobby Deibler, I work in the Mountain West, Big Sky, and WAC. So I have 6 different Division I conferences that go from California to Texas to up the upper Midwest. So travel is a big part of it. The travel is one of the things that is the toughest thing about this profession. And when I say profession, it is at the Division I level. The travel is a killer. I just can't stand it. The airports and the weather, and especially even up here, it's a challenge. But you have to get there.
Hillsborough Economic Development Committee supports businesses in the Hillsborough community in the form of loans and grants. Experience Hillsborough. There's more at 104.
Why did you become an official, or what is the reasoning, or why should someone become an official? We kind of answered that a little bit, Mark, but what's the question that you get the most from maybe just a common fan after a game, or someone who walks into Cherryberry and notices you and says, hey, I saw you at the Bison game, I think the other day, or I saw you at this. What's a question or two that you just get from the public from your point of view the most here, Mark?
I do get that. People come in and notice, but is why do you do it? I mean, or number one, how do you get involved? Number one, and I answer those questions for you. But why do you do it? And for me, it's just because I used to play the game, and obviously giving back to the game and staying involved. I know it's a cliche and people say it all the time, but for me personally, and a lot of guys that I know, it just staying involved with the game. Unfortunately, some of the, in the past few years, I'm talking probably 5 to 10 years even, is that we can't retain the young kids anymore that want to come in and give it a try. And they don't get paid a lot of money at the high school level and the sub-varsity stuff. And for the abuse that they take, they're just not willing to put up, willing to go forward with that. And I don't blame them. Some of the stuff that I hear and see is quite honestly crazy. And it's not, the coaches are fine, the players are fine. It's the, it's the noise and the pushback from the stands, and that's unfortunate. And I understand being a parent. I had kids in high school sports and all that, and I get it, being an advocate for your child and all that. But I'm just telling you, some of these parents they cross the line way too often, and I don't think they realize half the time what they're even yelling and saying.
And that was going to be my follow-up with just the numbers game where it is right now. With COVID, everyone's talked about pre-COVID, prior COVID. Was COVID part of it, Mark? Or is it really, as we've seen from a local level to a national level, when you hear stories sometimes, whether it's a 5th grade basketball tournament or hockey, or maybe it goes all the way through varsity and sometimes even collegiate, where you might get some unruly fans. Is it really the spectators, the loved ones, the friends, more so than maybe what COVID kind of brought into it, where everybody kind of looked back and said, okay, what do I want or not want? Maybe more so in my life in the last, 2 years since, 2020 here, Mark.
Yeah, I don't, people want to use COVID as an excuse, I guess. And to me, I don't see it that way. I mean, you see all the videos out there now on social media about officials getting attacked, whether it be on the soccer field, the football field, the basketball floor. I don't think they can use that excuse of COVID and being, now they're out and about. It happened way before COVID, and it's going to happen after we speak today, unfortunately. But so I don't think it's a COVID issue at all. I just think I just think parents and people get caught up in the moment and they don't know how or what they're saying, and they react to in a negative way because all they see is us in stripes. They have no idea who we are outside the basketball facility, and if they got to know us, we're just normal people and doing something that we love to do and making a little bit of money on the side to do it. But all they see is the stripes. All they see is the negativity when we make a call against a loved one, and that we're just bad people, which is it's laughable to me. But because I know all the people that I've been associated with on basketball are really good people, and I just wish people would I don't go to somebody's job and yell at them if they make a mistake. And we make mistakes. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's a hard game to referee at all levels. And even at the lower levels, I think it's even more incumbent to understand what you're doing because, it's hard to make decisions when the talent level isn't as good. But when we start getting yelled at, it's like, dude, I don't come to your business and start yelling at you. And you're here, that's the way we look at it anyway.
I guess the last thing on this point of view, in terms of the unruly fans or spectators, is there a way to have like an open house or to put the human element into it? Like you said, Mark, because one thing I think I hear from officials is just like a really good football player, basketball player, sometimes they're human at the end of the day. They go through life struggles, but you see them sometimes as an industry, not so much as a person at particular times. And I feel like that's the way as an official. Is there a way from your point of view to maybe, bridge the gap a little bit more? Or are we so past the stopping point where it's not going to go back to maybe what it was 15, 20, 30 years ago, or maybe it was a little more kosher compared to maybe what it is today?
A few years ago, West Fargo had me come in and visit with the team and the coaches and, update them on what the official side of it, what we look at, what we're told to look at, what we're told to, not told to call, but points of emphasis and stuff. So we educated the coaches and the players at West Fargo, and then they took that back to the parents at a parents meeting. So the parents at least had an idea of what we're up against as far as what we're being taught and trained to do. And they may not know all the rules. So they have really no idea what they're even yelling about. So I think if the parents would get educated a little bit, maybe have a meeting with the coaches before the season, and I'm sure they do, but I would advocate, and I strong belief that they should have an official there, especially the high school. I know in the college game, we go to the UND and NDSU when they're practicing early on in October, they have us come in and work their scrimmages and stuff and visit with the teams to let them know, hey, what over the summer at the camps, what are they telling you? And so they're educated. They know They see the videos that we have to see. So at that level, it's a little bit more, but at the high school, there is no videos, as per se. But I think just the educational part of it, if parents would understand the rules and why, if a player goes into another player, knocks them down, it's not always a foul on that offense. So there's a lot of things that they're not educated on. And that's not being rude. That's just being honest.
What's the hardest call is there to make? I'm sure baseball's got one. I'm sure football's got something a little bit different. Basketball, from my point of view, probably the block charge is always the most bang play. But Mark, for someone who's lived it, who's done it, what's a couple of the toughest calls to make from your point of view?
Yeah, the charge block is still tough. I mean, that's really tough. Now they brought the restricted area arc even into high school. Makes it even tougher around the restricted area if it was in or out and all that. But it just all comes back to training, what your comfort level is. But the offensive foul block / offensive foul is still a hard call. It's a tough one. Verticality at times. Did the guy jump straight, jump up straight, or did he go to A to B? A to B is a foul. Verticality A to A is not a foul. So that's a judgment thing. And there's some serious, when I say contact, there's some guys that run in there and jump into a legal defender, and he might go to the floor and just get creamed, but he caused that issue. So you have to understand, referee the defense, did he jump vertically? Did he maintain all that? So it's all going back in your mind. And basically what you do is you see plays, year after year, and it goes into your video library, and then you're like, okay, I've seen that play before. So you just react to what you saw, seen. And we always talk about young officials need to see plays because you need to get that video library of saying, I've seen that play. It doesn't surprise me. I know what that is now. So the more times that you can see games or call plays, and it makes you a better official.
A couple more things here with Mark Riggs and Mark, the replay, right? This was a big deal in the 90s and 2000s when it came in at the professional level, and once it came in now at the college level. And how much has replay helped, hindered, or is it kind of indifferent from your point? Because I know, like anybody, whether it's a broadcaster, an official, a player, a fan, you just want the game to go from A to B without too much stoppages. Hopefully no one gets injured. Everyone just kind of gets through the game, win, lose, or draw. But at the end of the day, Mark, how has replay helped or hindered, in your point of view, the game of sports right now?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because replay is good and replay is bad. And when I say bad, it's because we use it as a crutch sometimes. We think we can just run over to the monitor and re-referee the play, which we can't. We always want to get it right. And when you go to the monitor, you're going to get it right for the most part. But we can't just run over the monitor every time we want. There's rules and there's exceptions and stuff when we can go over timing and stuff. High school really doesn't have that option right now as far as going over the monitor. But in the college game, especially Division II on up, obviously all those places have monitors and stuff, and it's something that's a tool for us to use on something that's maybe atypical or something that we didn't see live, that we can go over. So I think it's a good tool. Obviously, in the college game every year, they open up a little bit more to us of what we can look at. Under 2 minutes now, a lot of things are involved. So I think it's a good tool to make sure that we get it right. But we can't just use it as a tool like, okay, I'm not going to make a decision. I'm going to run over to the monitor and make a decision, which we can't do. So,
And then my final thing for you, Mark, if someone came in and knocked on your door tomorrow and said, hey, I want to become a ref, or I want to learn how to become a ref. It doesn't matter the sport. What do I need to do just to, be a 6th grade official at name your sport that you really want to be part of? What are some of the avenues, or what's the door to kind of pass to just get into the basics of wanting to learn about being an official, or what do they need to do, Mark?
Yeah, so they can contact myself. You can contact me. What would get you registered? Number one, I think if you don't work anything other than JV and down, I don't think there's much of a cost of anything. But registered as a JV official enough, there's a process for the state, which we have to get you registered with the state, which is paperwork. And then just going out there and getting involved in some varsity games. I'm not talking. We have a lot of openings for that really the youth basketball, and that's when you get into it to find out if that's something that you're even something that excites you. Granted, now, like I said, that's some varsity stuff sometimes, and the lower levels, it's tough to referee at times because the athletes are still developing and they're not as strong as the varsity people and stuff. And just hear me out, is that the higher levels you start working, it actually gets easier because the players play and they know how to play the game, but obviously more sophisticated than obviously in the elementary areas. But to your point, just contact myself or Rob Kuhneman or Todd Rowe, and we would 100% get you set in the right direction. It's never too late. I mean, we always look for officials, and like I said, we do have a lot of games, even in the sub-varsity level, that we can still assign today that we need to fill. And then the 3 class systems coming out possibility of that. So that's even going to put more stress on us because we're going to have to spread some of these games out throughout the entire week because we just can't work Tuesdays, Fridays, and some Saturdays because we just don't have enough. Even today's games, we don't have enough. So if that ever comes in, and sounds like it's got a little bit of legs to it right now, but if that happens, we're going to be in a hurt bag if they don't spread the games out through the entire week.
Final thing, this is our and one question for you, Mark, at the end of the day. There's going to be some stories, I'm sure, that you've had during your time, but what are some good stories? What are some stories? I know sometimes we hear about officials and we hear about, as we mentioned, maybe it's the unruly fans or maybe it's something in between. But at the end of the day, I'm sure you wouldn't be in the profession right now for how many years if you didn't have some good positive things on top of it. So what are some fun stories that you might be able to elaborate on 1 or 2 with us here, just to send people off to say, take a look at officiating, look and understand the game. If you know it, guys like yourself are looking for the next man, the next woman to come in and continue to progress, elevate the game as much as a coach or an assistant coach that doesn't, or an athletic director. But what are some fun stories that you can share for us here, Mark?
Well, a few years ago, Rob Coon and myself, we put together a football crew, and we got our sons involved, Kate and Calvin, and my son-in-law, Tyler Farkas, got involved. We put a crew together, and Midco Sports did a little piece on that. And we just thought it was something up in Midwest. People looked at it, people noticed us, and they still talk about that today. But right after that, about a year later, I was down at Oral Roberts, and I was shaking hands with the coaches, and Paul Mills, the head coach of Oral Roberts, said, Mark, he said, I didn't know you did football. I'm like, okay. I said, well, how do you know about that? He said, well, then he saw the piece and he thought that was great, giving back to the game and have my sons involved. So that was a really good story. Just the fact that a coach went outside because he knew we were doing football, reached out to us and said, that's a great job and stuff. And then other things like my dad passed a few years ago and during the basketball season, so I had to come off some games and stuff. And I got, I don't know how many emails or text or whatever from coaches, honestly, just reaching out and saying that he had heard about my dad and reached out and said that our prayers are with you and your family. So that was meaningful because those guys that you butt heads with during the year at times, and a good, for them to reach out, numerous people, that really meant a lot to me. But there's a lot of stories out there, after so many years, but the gratification of kids, being around the kids and working with them and on the floor, like I said, I know it's cliche, but for me, I love it when the day of the game, those 2 hours on the floor or whatever, not so much afterwards when the travel part of it, but it's rewarding. I mean, for me personally, it's just rewarding just to go out there and stay active and being around the kids and trying to keep up with them, but that's what I enjoy most, is just the interaction with the coaches and the players. That excites me.
Mark, I appreciate your time. Thank you for taking a different point of view, a different lens, so to speak, sometimes on the quarter, on the game. I got 30 more questions I'd like to ask you, but we'll get to that on a different time. Mark, thanks so much for your time, and happy holidays to you and your family.
You as well. Now, thanks for having me, Chase. I really appreciate it.
And that is going to do it for this edition of the Your Live Event Coaches Show, brought to you by the Hillsborough Economic Development Commission. We will be back next week, Wednesday, to start a brand new year, 2023. We'll talk plenty of girls basketball that time. We'll talk with Chad Newst, who is the coach of Hancock, the defending Minnesota Class A girls basketball champions. We'll also hear from Mike Benson of West Fargo and Brian Hovland of Underwood. And we'll also have a story that you may have heard about through the Twin Cities media about a young man from the Ukraine who is playing hockey in the state of Minnesota in Minnetonka. Mike Woodley is the young man's coach. We'll talk with him, and actually, to give a little bit of a preview, you can actually see this weekend there's a tournament in Moorhead of junior gold hockey, and Minnetonka is playing in that tournament. So that's this coming weekend, coming up Friday and Saturday. If you want to head over there to have a look at this team and also their goalie from the Ukraine. It's a really interesting story, and we'll have that for you next week on the Your Live Event Coaches Show. I'm Joe Lansolo. Happy New Year from everybody with the Hillsborough Economic Development Commission and those of us here at YourLiveEvent.com. Take care. We'll talk to you next week.